preparing the live stream now, so it should be going live in a matter of seconds. And there will probably be a small delay, so by the time this part is up live, oh, there we are, that's us live. So welcome everyone to the live stream from the Rainbow Project with the Police Ombudsman today. Thank you all for joining us. You will be pleased to know this is my second time talking live on Facebook today, and you'll be pleased to know I won't be doing most of the talking. So we're going to have a short presentation with Marie Anderson from the Police Ombudsman, and she's going to describe the service here and how we can access and kind of what's covered there. So I'm really happy to introduce Marie Anderson, the Police Ombudsman. Marie, welcome to our Facebook Live. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And it's my first time on broadcast live on Facebook, so really delighted to be here and a new experience for me. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Rainbow Project and others. Really appreciate it.
No problem. So we're going to go through a short slideshow that's going to be kindly Gavin Boyd is with us, and he's taking care of the technical side of things. So Gavin's going to go through the slideshow for you, Marie. So just give Gavin a nod or a wee shout whenever you need the page changed. So Gavin, if you're ready.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so Gavin, thank you very much and welcome everyone. Just a little bit of introduction. My name's Marie Anderson. I'm the 4th Police Ombudsman for Northern Ireland. Many of you will have heard of my predecessors, Nuala O'Loan, Al Hutchinson, and more recently Dr. Maguire. I'm now into my 3rd year as Police Ombudsman. I joined the office on the 16th of July 2019, so it has been a rather busy time. But the office is almost 21 years old, so it's coming of age this November. It first opened in November 2000, and the office was set up to be, for the first time in Northern Ireland, to provide an independent and impartial system for complaints about police. So all complaints about police come to my office. It's not like other jurisdictions in Scotland, England and Wales. The first point of contact for a complaint about police is the police themselves or are the police authority. But here in Northern Ireland, because of our history and background to the creation of the office, all complaints come to the office. And I think that's very important. Many people say, who are you, Police Ombudsman? Who are you accountable to? Because, you know, I hold the police to account and investigate complaints about police conduct. Well, I'm accountable to the Northern Ireland Assembly, and every year I have to annually report to the Northern Ireland Assembly on my functions. And that is something that I think is important in terms of accountability, and I think it's an important part of the fabric of police accountability overall in Northern Ireland. So just so people understand about the types of investigations. So all of the public complaints are about the conduct of police officers, and that can be conduct which is criminal in nature, matters such as theft or corrupt behaviour, or indeed it can be misconduct. And misconduct is often described as a breach of the code of ethics. So that's, you know, lack of integrity, lack of openness, honesty, trust, and that's very important. I use the word trust because for your community, for our community in Northern Ireland more generally, for people to have trust in police is very, very important. You have to feel that you can go to the police and that you can trust them with your issues. However, I'm the backup person, if you like, because if the police fail, then I'm part of that public confidence in policing because there is independent oversight. So looking at other issues, the Chief Constable can refer matters to me. So if there is a death in custody, for instance, the Chief Constable can refer that issue to me. It's probably described as an Article 2 issue because it's an issue about death, or indeed any matter of serious misconduct can be referred by the Chief Constable the Policing Board, or the Department of Justice, and also the Director of Public Prosecutions. But an important part of my role as Police Ombudsman is my ability to investigate on my own initiative, if you like, and it's called own motion investigation. Why is that important? Because many people don't want to make a complaint to the police. They fear retribution. They fear that something bad will happen to them. They fear that in terms of the criminal justice system, that there will be, if you like, an issue about their having made a complaint. So it's important that I have the ability, as former police ombudsman have had, to investigate on my own motion. And I would use that power sparingly, but it is an important part of accountability. I think it's also important because many of you will have heard about the investigation into the police conduct at Black Lives Matter protests last June. I think it's important also that I can not only look at conduct of individual officers, but that I can look at issues of policy, practice and approach by police. And last year I published the report into police conduct in respect of the Black Lives Matter protest, which was a very significant extension of our Section 60A power. And it's something that I hope to use more of in the future, because there's no point in having a police ombudsman if you can't have some impact and some ability to improve policing in Northern Ireland, to improve policing for the citizens, all the citizens of Northern Ireland. And so I think this is an important power, and I intend to use it much more frequently in future. I think many people don't know this. The Harbour Police, the Airport Police, Ministry MOD Police and the National Crime Agency are all bodies that are also in my jurisdiction, so that if there are serious issues about the conduct of any of those policing bodies, then individuals can complain direct to my office. So what about making a complaint? How would you go about making a complaint to the office? Well, it's important that you act promptly, because there's a 12-month time limit, so that if an issue has happened, an incident, an event, an interaction with police that you're unhappy with, or that anyone that you represent or that you advocate for is unhappy with, or on whom you act on their behalf, it's a 12-month time limit. Look, with all investigations, especially criminal investigations and investigations into the most serious matters, it's important to come promptly. I can't emphasize that enough, because our investigation will be better if we have the best, the most current evidence available. So take an issue of, say, Saturday night outside, a pub in Belfast. There will be CCTV available around an altercation or an interaction in respect of which police are involved. But as we all know, CCTV isn't held forever. So it's important to come quickly so that my investigators can get that CCTV, or now very often we have body-worn video from police. But it's important to get evidence quickly so that we can work in what we call the golden hours, the important hours after an incident has happened, to get as much information, fresh information as possible, and to identify relevant witnesses. I think this is an important statistic, as you'll see on the slides. About 40% of all of our complaints end up in full investigation, so that we will look at all issues. Now, when you make a complaint to the office, say about rudeness of a police officer or attitude, or indeed delay in responding to telephone calls, they might be the sorts of cases that we would try to resolve. And we try to get the complainant and the police to resolve them together, if necessary, by acknowledging failure, where police acknowledge failure on the part of police, and provide an apology. And that can be important in terms of, minor complaints. And I say minor, it's not minor to you as an individual, but what I mean is the sorts of complaints that can be resolved, we try to resolve. But I think it's important statistic to recognise that 40% of all complaints are fully investigated by the office. I have a team of highly experienced, highly dedicated individuals who know about the ways around the police system, police databases, can get access to body-worn video. So that's all very important. I think what has been interesting in the first quarter of this, my third year as police ombudsman, 21-22, the first quarter complaints about police have increased by a record 31%. The last time we had figures of this kind in terms of total number of complaints was in 2016. And I've reflected there, and you see in the slide, that over the last 5 years, complaints have been reducing about the police. And Gavin will talk later about police complaints from particular lesbian and gay community. But I think it's important for us to recognise that complaints are on the increase. I've reflected on this in the first quarter of this year. Policing has the police, the chief constable, and issues around the Ormo Road incident and others have led to a great deal of animosity against the police. And I wonder, is that in part the reason for the increase in complaints in this first quarter? Or is it just that because in the past 6 months I've issued 3 public statements? Is it just about general awareness about the office, that there is an Office of Police Ombudsman that's entirely independent of police? So we'll continue over this next year to see what the reasons are for that increase. But certainly, myself and my staff, while we might feel the pressure of the increase in complaints, it's welcome. I welcome complaints, because only by you and the constituency, the people that you represent, advocate for, only then can police learn. The only way police will learn is if individuals make complaints and it's independently investigated. And I'll talk a bit about learning and my vision for that later on in this presentation. So types of complaints. I mean, I've mentioned complaints about criminality, and would you believe it, we do get complaints about police officers acting unlawfully, such as stealing. But we also get a significant number of complaints about failures in duty. So many of the complaints, there are common themes about, I made a complaint to the police and it wasn't properly investigated, or there was a delay, or no one updated me about what was happening to my complaint. So those are probably the largest number of complaints to the office. And here's an interesting one, because it's a catch-all: oppressive behaviour. So oppressive behaviour can range from assault. I was assaulted in the custody suite, to excessive force being used. Handcuffs were used on me and I don't think it was necessary. I wasn't being aggressive. Or indeed, there can be complaints of harassment. So and very much in looking at complaints of harassment by police, and particularly, I think, certain parts of the community, and particularly young people, might feel they're being harassed by police when they're being moved on. We always we're victim-centric. We look at how the victim felt around that. And of great assistance now is the fact that we do have access to body-worn video. I mean, one of the issues around the contentious introduction of spit and bite guards during COVID by police, that one of the things that has been important is to have direct access to that body-worn video to see if the conduct was aggressive and there was, language used that was inappropriate, or indeed, as in one instance with a spit and bite guard, a spit and bite guard was used for a prolonged period of time. So, some of these issues are coming to the fore. Incivility is an area of complaint. And again, in the past, when someone has said a police officer was rude to me or a police officer was abusive, it would not have been possible to decide on that case, because very often it was one word against the other. It was the complainant's word against the police officers, and indeed the police officers' colleagues. But now we've body-worn video, and that is something that's a very important tool for the office, and it's important that we have direct access to that, so we can assess those complaints much quicker than we've done so before. I think I hand over to you now, Gavin.
That's great. Thanks very much, Marie. As we've been preparing for this presentation, we started to look at some of the data that the organisation held on complaints that have been received from the community. And as you can see from this graph, there's actually been a relatively healthy and steady proportion of complaints received from lesbian, gay and bisexual people to the office. So for lesbian, gay people, it's generally hovering at around the kind of 8, 9. Sometimes it might creep up towards 10% of complaints. And for bisexual people, it's been increasing over the past number of years and now kind of sticking steady at around 2% of the complaints received by the office. Now, that would be, I suppose, roughly in line with the kind of estimates for the size of the population of people in Northern Ireland with a minority sexual orientation. So I think that's a relatively encouraging thing to see, is that there has been this consistent trend over the past 5 years of about 1 in 10 complaints received by the office coming from people with minority sexual orientations. A little bit of a health warning in there is that when we looked at that data, we did find that men were consistently more likely to make a complaint than women within the LGBT population. So gay men much more likely to make a complaint than lesbian or gay women. But I do think it's important to stress that it is encouraging that lesbian, gay and bisexual people do feel able to make a complaint to the police ombudsman. Now, when it comes to the experiences of trans people making complaints, we do know that the office does receive a small number of complaints from trans people every year. However, an issue arises when trying to maybe put some figures around that, because like a lot of statutory agencies, the office has found it challenging to correctly and adequately capture the monitoring data on trans complainants. That's something that the Information and Communications Unit will be exploring over the next year, about how best to ask the questions to capture that really important data, and to find the ways of doing that. We're going to be looking at best practice examples from other statutory bodies, and from engaging with the community as well about how best to record that information. I want to just briefly touch on what I think is a really important case study of a complaint that was made to the office, to the police ombudsman, from a member of the LGBT community, because I think it highlights what kind of maybe the particular experiences of a poor police experience that could be experienced by an LGBT person, and the value of having a police ombudsman who can investigate that complaint. So the police ombudsman received a complaint from a man who worked in a bar. An angry customer towards the end of the night had subjected the man to homophobic abuse, and there was an assault in which the victim suffered a split lip and chipped teeth. His complaint to the police ombudsman was that the police let the attacker off with a caution because he was well known in the local community. The police ombudsman investigators found that the investigating police officer had initially recommended that the attacker should receive what's called a community resolution notice. And this is a way of dealing with low-level offending rather than the attacker being considered for prosecution. Now, when the police ombudsman investigators were doing their investigation, the police officer admitted that he had made the community resolution notice recommendation without looking at photographs of the victim's injuries. The police officer claimed not to have known that there were any photos, but the police ombudsman investigators found an entry in the police case file which should have alerted him to their existence. So on the police file, there was a note that there were photographs of the injuries which had been experienced by the victim, but the police officer didn't do the step of actually looking at those pictures which show the seriousness of the injuries. It was also concerning that the police officer recorded no reasonable rationale for his decision to disregard the alleged hate crime element, or for treating the incident as a common assault rather than the more serious crime of an assault occasioning actual bodily harm. Because most folks will know that a community resolution notice is really for dealing with minor incidents, and it's particularly not supposed to be used for instances involving allegations of hate crime. So the police ombudsman recommended that the PSNI should discipline the police officer for failing to properly investigate the incident, and the police implemented this recommendation. The police also ordered the officer to obtain the pictures of the victim's injuries in order to complete a more thorough investigation, and to submit a file to the Public Prosecution Service. So there's an example of how one person's poor experience of interacting with the police led to a complaint to the police ombudsman. That case was properly investigated, and better practice came from that. But I think some things to highlight, because I think there would be common experiences for a lot of LGBT people who maybe experienced a hate crime, was that the seriousness of their injuries was not reflected in the officer's actions. So he didn't take proper consideration of the fact that this wasn't just a minor altercation. This was a relatively serious assault. That the hate crime element that the victim alleged had been disregarded, hadn't been given proper consideration. And again, I think that's maybe something that a lot of LGBT people would have experienced if they're interacting with the police, is that the hate crime element of their experience has not been given its due consideration. There was this element of the improper use of a community resolution notice. These are not supposed to be used when there's an allegation of a hate motivation. So I think this is a really useful case study in highlighting some of the themes that a lot of LGBT people could maybe relate to in terms of their experiences of hate crime, and how the fear of your incident not being taken seriously, or the fear that the hate crime element would be disregarded, that can create a barrier for LGBT people making a report to the police in the first place. But the outcome from this, the fact that the officer was disciplined, the fact that there was the order to do a thorough investigation of the victim's complaint, that demonstrates the importance of having this independent and impartial police complaint system. And it demonstrates the power of the police ombudsman to be able to deliver better outcomes for people who have been let down by the police. So I think there are some really important outcomes for the community to take from this chat that we're having today. The first one being that the Office of the Police Ombudsman is for everyone. Everyone who has a complaint around police conduct can make a complaint to the Police Ombudsman, and it will be properly considered and investigated where necessary. It's really encouraging that the data that we hold shows that LGBT people do feel able to make complaints to the Police Ombudsman about their experiences of policing. Of course, there's always going to be room for improvement, and that's why we're exploring those options for better monitoring the experiences of trans complainants. And also over the coming year, we're undertaking work to better understand the barriers to making complaints to the police ombudsman that are experienced by young people. And we want to make sure that the young people that we're engaging around this work is reflective of the diversity of the young people across Northern Ireland. And so we'll be making sure that the voices of LGBT young people are heard as part of that process as well. So that's our presentation. I'll maybe turn off the slides now, Joe, and we'll see if there's any questions that folks maybe want to put to Marie.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marie and Gavin. That was really comprehensive look at the service, and I think there's some things in there that I wasn't aware of, especially the parts that are covered other than the police service. For example, the airport police. Would that cover the people who X-ray your luggage and search it on the way to board in your flight? Is that those staff?
No, Joe. It's the staff who are exercising enforcement powers. So if they have powers to say stop and search, it's not the administrative staff. It's those who would be exercising police type powers. The reason that there's an ability to complain to the police ombudsman is to achieve that balance between the powers that they have to interfere with individuals' rights and freedoms, and again the right of the individual to complain about that interference. And we do not get a lot of complaints, but we do get some complaints about airport staff. I have looked into this, but it's often around their exercising those powers of stopping and searching and seizure.
Thanks, Marie. We do have a few comments from the Facebook comments here. So one person is commenting that they were at the Black Lives Matter protest last year, and they weren't happy with the way the police had treated them. They said they experienced, from their point of view, they were bullied and threatened, and it took over a year before anyone did anything. They also are making a comment that about the staff of the police ombudsman. From their perception, they're saying that they're full of ex-civil servants within police. So I'm getting a bit of colour there that this person is not wholly trusting of the police ombudsman staff, but surely there's a recruiting procedure there and everyone's on board because they're wanting to do that kind of job, Marie.
Yeah, all the roles, jobs, they're all advertised. I mean, it is a criminal investigation, but while particularly on the history side, we would have mainly ex-police from wider UK investigating historical matters. There's a very diverse workforce here in terms of where people come from. They're not all ex-civil servants. Some actually have worked in other ombudsman's offices, such as the Garda Ombudsman or indeed the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman. And I'm just thinking of the investigator on that Black Lives Matter protest. The investigating officer actually background was barrister. So the investigation began in June of last year, and the report was in December. And the recommendations are publicly available in terms of what was recommended to PSNI to improve engagement with that particular community. And as I understand the PPS, taking into account my findings in that report, that when files went to the PPS to prosecute a number of individuals in respect of breach of the COVID-19 regulations and also potentially breach of Section 44 of the Serious Crime Act, which I believed was an over-the-top response to the organisers of the protest, taking into account my report on the Black Lives Matter protests and police conduct in respect of same, and taking into account other factors, PPS decided not to prosecute.
Okay, so that was a good outcome. Excellent. There's just one more comment on Facebook. It says that just one person has said that they've been to the police many times over being attacked because of their sexual orientation, and they've even been attacked by the police themselves. And they've said that the Ombudsman has done nothing. So I've just asked that person to keep in touch with me by email. We can forward you the details, Marie, if they want to come through ourselves. We can get the details forwarded to you.
No, I think that's important. If anyone complains, if anyone goes into a police station to complain about a member of the police force or indeed officer conduct in general, that complaint should be automatically referred to this office. So the police themselves must refer all complaints to us. So if that, I don't know if that individual complained to a local police station or to a local sergeant about police officer conduct. If they did, it should be referred to. And while we can't discuss individual complaints, as you'll appreciate, in the public domain, do give me some follow up on that.
Certainly. So anyone who has a complaint, please get in touch. You can contact myself or the police ombudsman, and we'll work together and make sure that that you're being heard. And just one more comment has just come in, and it's a positive one. It's just saying thank you for a wonderful update of the work from the office. It's important that crimes are reported so the police know if there's a pattern of developing of different types of abuse. Thank you. And
no, thank you. And just to say, Joe, as Gavin knows, when I talked about the Section 60A practice and procedure, in future we'll be looking to instead of, or in addition to reporting on individual cases, and if themes are developing, patterns of behaviour or cultural issues are developing in relation to police, in relation to any matter, then we'll be starting to do thematic reports, which I think can deliver the learning to police and make recommendations for change. That's what this is all about. It's about improving policing for everyone, as Gavin said.
Yeah. Excellent. I'll just check and see if there's any more, and feel free to give us your comments. If you're not watching this live and you're watching the recording, send an email through to myself, joe@rainbow-project.org, or you can contact Marie directly.
Yes.
Marie, what's your email address, or what's the best way for people to
well, it's info@policeombudsman.org, or my email address is marie.anderson@policeombudsman.org. I usually do try to respond as quickly as possible, but my PA will pick it up if I'm out of the office.
Excellent. And Gavin, your communications manager, is that right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So if people want to contact me, they can gavin.boyd@policeombudsman.org. Happy to talk to anyone about any of the issues that we talked about tonight, or that affect them.
Excellent. Yeah, so Gavin used to work for the Rainbow Project. That's why you may be a familiar face. It may be confusing for some people. What's Gavin doing on the other side of the screen? But if you prefer to contact Gavin because it's a familiar face, then that's another way to get in touch. But certainly we'll all do our best for you. That's what we're all here for.
Thanks very much, Joe.
Okay,
Thank you.
If that's everything, then we'll wrap it up, and people feel free to get in touch with us anytime after this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Gavin.
Bye. Bye. Bye.